We've got a new update and we're going to dive into all of the changes, but let's start with the biggest ones and then we're going to read the full patch notes. Apollo got a huge change to riposte, so when you max riposte, you no longer get a really long stun. Instead, you get bullet, spirit, and melee lifesteal against the target that you riposted. Honestly, I'm not sure how good this is. To me, I think the long stun was like one of the best, parts of Apollo's kit currently. So the fact that he no longer will get the long stun is a bit unfortunate, but he will get a ton of lifesteal against the target, so it will perhaps spawn some new builds. We'll see. Mirage, unfortunately, still has double tornado. However, the lift duration from tornado is now much shorter once again, which means that getting hit by multiple tornadoes shouldn't feel as bad. Mo and Krill can now supposedly use items during combo. However, at the time of recording, this seems to be bugged. I'm assuming it's going to get fixed soon. It's unclear whether or not you can use movement items as well, so I need to test this, but we'll see. He's got a lot of changes. So 2 points in Sleep Dagger no longer gives you a very short cooldown Sleep Dagger. You now need to max it to get cooldown reduction. And on top of that, Fixation now scales with weapon damage when you max it. Now, the weapon damage scaling doesn't seem to be that crazy. Even with max weapon, I've got about 200% weapon damage on this current build. Obviously, you could maybe get more, but it goes to 0.37 from 0.31. So I think even in the best cases, you're only going to be doing a little bit more damage. The last big hero change is Yamato. Now, as far as grapples go, she only gets 1 additional grapple now instead of 2. And the time between charges has been increased from 4 seconds to 5 seconds, meaning she shouldn't be able to spam them as much as before. She's still going to be able to chase you a lot, but now she might need to buy extra charge to chase you across the map, so an improvement for sure. Now, talking about items, a lot of the biggest changes are spirit items, right? So Echo Shard being one of the biggest ones. So now this item's cooldown is increased by the cooldown of the imbued ability. So let's take Haze Dagger, for example. If I put Echo Shard on Haze Dagger and I max the dagger here, we're going to see that Echo Shard's cooldown is 43 seconds. In pretty much every single situation, this is a nerf to the item. There are no abilities that you can put it on that the cooldown is shorter than it was before. And if the ability had a particularly long cooldown, this is a significant nerf to Echo Shard. Now, Spirit Burden got a really significant change. First of all, the explosion damage is a lot less than it was before, but the other thing is that the cooldown is per enemy now. So this means 2 things. One is you can activate it on multiple enemies. So here, if I flog all the rems, if I had enough damage, which I don't currently, but let's say I flog and then I ground strike, they can all get Spirit Burn individually. And as you can see, it's going to take on all of them. The other thing is that since the cooldown is per enemy, that means that you cannot buy multiple Spirit Burns on your team and proc them one after the other to do a huge amount of burst damage. It's only going to be, you're not going to want to have more than 2 Spirit Burns on your team, probably, and even 2 might be pushing it. This should also make the item better for farming, as you can activate Spirit Burn individually on any heroes in the jungle. Not heroes, sorry, neutrals. However, it does do half damage to non-heroes, so keep that in mind. Another big item change we've had is Tank Buster no longer activates from items. So for example, Mystic Shot shouldn't activate Tank Buster here. So if I shoot Mystic Shot, as you can see, there's a little bit of headshot damage, but it does not activate my Tank Buster. Same for Cold Front, Arctic Blast, any other item like that. You're not going to be able to activate Tank Buster from items. I talked a little bit about the combo of Mystic Shot, Tank Buster, and Spirit Burn, so I'm glad to see they've addressed it. One of the biggest item changes is Cursed. Now, Cursed Relic felt kind of bad to buy because it reduced your damage at all times, which meant if you were a hero that liked doing damage, you usually didn't want to buy this item. It would reduce your damage by 14%. Now, it reduces your damage still, but only for the duration of the curse. So as I cast Curse on someone, I'm getting minus 25% damage, as you can see here on the bottom left of the screen. The moment the curse is over, though, I do my normal damage. This makes Curse Relic a lot more viable on most heroes and makes it so it's still a crowd control item, but for the rest of the fight, after you've used Curse, you still do your full damage. Now, this, in my opinion, they made the damage penalty minus 25%. I believe they were trying to specifically target a hero like Haze that can use Curse for solo kills. So they want to make sure that you're not using Curse Relic for solo kills, but rather you're using it in team fights to shut out specific people. I think that the item is going to be a lot better, and it hopefully should not be anywhere near as good on someone like Haze. That's it for the biggest changes for now. Obviously, that was just a little highlight, so let's get into the patch notes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you guys. Stamina Bucket 3 heroes, slowest, have their ground dash time increase from 0.7 to 0.72, and air dash time increase from 0.49 to 0.51. This is essentially just targeting heroes like Abrams and other tanks and make it so that, you know, they are not as mobile. They should not change that much, but it's a slight nerf to mobility. The orb spawners in base that give 10 souls on hit now split to nearby players on expire. So it looks like you're going to get the souls. If I understand this correctly, you're going to get the souls in base no matter whether you hit them or not. And if you don't hit them, they're just going to split between the players nearby. And if you do hit them, they're going to go straight to you. Fixed an audio issue. Now, when it comes to items, we've got Crushing Fists. The max stack stun duration increased from 0.5 to 0.75, and the bullet resist reduction was also increased. I think Crushing Fist was an under, I would say, not undervalued, but like underbought item. Like, not a lot of people bought this item because, to be honest, it's not very good. So I think that these slight buffs make perfect sense. We've already talked about the Cursed Relic changes, so very curious to see how that plays out, but I think it's very exciting. Diviner's Kevlar got a slight buff of 5 spirit power. I think it's completely fine. Honestly, I haven't seen this item be bought in a really, really long time. Echo Shard got 0.5 second post cast time. So I actually didn't mention this earlier, but the post cast time of Echo Shard should make it so that it's a lot harder to like instantly combo like a bunch of abilities in a row as well. And it doesn't give fire rate. So overall, like, very big nerfs to Echo Shard. Ethereal Shift has had its cooldown increased by 2 seconds, just a small nerf. Frenzy got a small buff. It gives Bullet Lifesteal as an innate, which I think will help the item feel a little bit better to buy. The item has been on the verge of being good for quite some time, so this might be enough for the item to be viable now. Fury Trance now gives 1 meter movement speed, and on top of that, the active removes the move speed penalty while shooting, like Fleetfoot. So this gives another option for carries to essentially have like a Fleetfoot type item. So this should be good, and it's a buff to gun. And one general rule of thumb from this patch is gun heroes should be a little bit better. Spirit heroes should be a little bit worse. It's obviously still going to be spirit dominant because the game probably always will be, but it should help a little bit the gun heroes. This is mostly a bug fix for Lifestrike, so I'm not even going to read it. Mystic Shot has had its cooldown reduced by 1 second, but it's also had its spirit scaling reduced from 1.2 to 0.9. So essentially, it does less burst, but you get it slightly more often. I would consider this overall a nerf. Restorative Locket heal per boon increased from 0.32 to 0.5, which is pretty significant. So Restorative Locket got a slight nerf as far as its healing goes. Scourge, which we didn't talk about earlier, but honestly was probably worthy of being one of the biggest changes. It doesn't give debuff resistance innately anymore. It only gives it on its active. So this is kind of interesting because it does 2 things. One, it makes Scourge an even better support item because now it'll give debuff resist to somebody else, which I don't really think that there's any ways to do that in the game before this patch. And secondly, it'll make Scourge just be a little bit less powerful in general because you don't get debuff resist just for buying the item. It's only while the item is active. They also reduce the damage that it does from 2.5% to 2.3%, so continuously nerfing its damage. Now, Slowing Bullets and Weighted Shots both got very significant nerfs. Slowing Bullets doesn't give weapon damage anymore at all. It used to give 15%, doesn't give that. And now Weighted Shots goes from 40% to 30%. I think this makes a lot of sense because most people would just buy Weighted Shots over Point Blank, to be honest, because the downsides of Weighted Shots weren't that bad for most heroes that wanted it. So now there's going to be a bigger difference between Weighted Shots and Point Blank as far as damage goes. Before it was only 10%. Now it's going to be 20%. And on top of that, Slowing Bullets had a lot of power once again, right? It had a slow. So hopefully this makes Point Blank like a little bit more interesting to buy. Spiritual Overflow now gives a bonus 10% Spirit Lifesteal on proc. The ability duration was reduced and the fire rate was reduced, so now it just gives a little bit more Spirit Lifesteal. Interesting changes overall to Spiritual Overflow as an item. Curious to see if it's bought more. I think it should help it a little bit for sure. We already talked about Spirit Burn, so it doesn't hit in a radius anymore. It only affects the primary target. They changed the cooldown from being on the item to being target based. They removed the half cooldown against NPC, and explosion damage was reduced. So overall, I would say it's a nerf to like a bunch of Spirit Burn spamming, but the item's still going to be really good. Like, it's still some of the most damage that you can do for buying a spirit item. I think it's still going to be really good, and it gives a lot of anti-heal. And since it's now target-based, it means you'll always be able to activate Spirit Burn on the target that you wanted, if that makes sense. So, like, before, you sometimes could activate Spirit Burn on your first ability, and let's say you didn't hit the Shiv. Oh, well, Shiv doesn't have Spirit Burn on him, so he's fine. Now you should be able to always activate it on Shiv and not use it kind of like on accident before a fight. Suppressor got a slight nerf, and Tank Buster we already talked about. Now, when it comes to heroes, Apollo Riposte stun duration, the base duration got increased by 0.2, but then the tier 3 got changed from the duration to Bullet Life Spirit and Melee Lifesteal. So kind of a buff and a nerf to Melee Apollo. Before, you could get 2 heavy melees during the stun, and honestly, the stun was like ridiculously strong. So I'm not really sure that this is going to buff Apollo, even though it's a ludicrous amount of lifesteal. I think there's so much anti-heal in the game that I'm not sure that this is going to be really enough for this ability to be maxed, but we'll see. Billy Rising Ram tier 3 reduced by 1%. Calico Ava tier 2 and her tier 3 both got nerfed slightly by 5 and 2% respectively. Celeste got some slight buffs, so Shining Wonder radius was increased, the Shining Wonder damage was increased by 10%, and the buffer duration was also increased, so all buffs to Celeste. Doorman got some interesting changes. So his base damage was nerfed. His gun scaling was buffed to compensate. So his gun damage later in the game shouldn't really be much worse, but early in the lane, it should be slightly worse. The charge time for Call Bell got increased by 1 second, meaning you shouldn't be able to spam them as much. Doorway duration got reduced by 5 seconds, but only base. As soon as you put points into it, you get it back. The tier 3 range duration was reduced by 5 meters. The luggage cart also had its base damage reduced, but once you get 1 point in it, you get it back. The range was also reduced, but once again, once you put 2 points in it, you get it back. So basically a lot of rearranging Doorman's power and putting more power into his AP, less power into his base form, which I tend to really like these types of changes because it makes the abilities not feel worse in the long run, but it, you know, balances out the hero's power over a game. I'm going to be honest, I don't think this is enough for Doorman. I would love to see much more drastic changes to him, but it is in the right direction. Now, Drifter got a slight Ren Spirit Scaling nerf and a tier 3 Silence Duration nerf as well. I think the hero's still going to be really strong, but some of his other combos also kind of got nerfed, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to assume Drifter's still going to be strong. Dynamo got a slight Singularity cooldown reduction, which is good. The cooldown was very, very, very long, so now 250 seconds should feel a little bit more reasonable. We've already talked about the Haze changes. Essentially, the Spirit Scaling also got nerfed, right? So Dagger build should overall be worse. And you don't get the cooldown until you upgrade to tier 3, which is a really, really big deal. You do get extra sleep duration on the tier 2, which is going to be better to like call teammates over, but essentially it's not going to be as good as like a solo kill type hero. The fixation change is also interesting. So it takes quite a bit of weapon damage. I think you need at least 100 weapon damage, like 100% weapon damage for fixation tier 3 to be as good as it was before. So if you have less than 100% weapon damage, fixation tier 3 is actually worse than it was before. Ivy Stoneform tier 3 spirit scaling was reduced from 1.7 to 1.5. Very, very slight change. Ivy's still going to be really good. Kelvin got a slight buff to his ultimate, 10 seconds less cooldown. Now, Lady Geist has some interesting changes. So life drain changed from 75% damage to heal to 100%. Life drain DPS reduced to provide the same effective heal as before, but with less DPS. So what these two lines mean are that you heal more from the damage that you do, but you're going to do less damage. So they've essentially lowered the DPS of the ability. They've made it so the ability will output less damage, but you'll heal the same amount as you did before. Now, this changes two things. One, this reduces Geist's damage output a little bit. But two, is this actually buffs an item like Healing Tempo on Geist, which is not going to get even more value. Because before, you were increasing the 75% heal. Now you're going to be increasing 100%. So items like Healing Booster and Healing Tempo are going to be buffed on Geist. This makes her be even more of like a drain tank / frontline type. And they've also further reduced her damage here by making it so Malice only amplifies her damage by 7% compared to 8. But if you go to the tier 3 upgrade, you get that percent back. So it looks like they're moving in the direction of like they want Geist to do a little bit less damage, but still kind of occupy her role as a frontline. Every patch, it feels like we've kind of moved closer towards that Geist playstyle. And I actually really like that direction for Geist. I think Geist's kit tells me, nothing about Geist's kit tells me that she wants to be a carry. I really like her as like a frontline type tank. Obviously, I don't want to reduce build diversity on her or anything like that, but I like these changes a lot. I might try Geist again and see what happens. Mina got some buffs. Now, honestly, I don't think Mina needed buffs. I've played a lot of Mina and she feels strong, but she got, so you have more time to recast Sanguine Retreat, and the tier 3 cast range was increased from +3 to +4 meters. Mirage got kind of taken out back. So we talked about the tornado changes where the lift duration is no longer increased when you get max tornado. The Scarab's base duration was also nerfed by 2 seconds, so his lane should be significantly worse. He now only gets +1 charge on tier 2, and he does get his duration back on the tier 2. So if he puts 2 points in Scarab, they last just as long as they did before. Apparently, there's a bug on Jinsmark tier 3 being -1 second cooldown instead of -0.75, so that's another nerf. Now, Mo and Krill, we've talked a little bit about it. So Burrow cooldown no longer starts after the conclusion of the ability, now starts immediately. So this actually makes duration even better on Mo than it already was. And I think that this will be a very, very significant buff to Mo. And then combo letting you cast items. Like I said, I tested it. I wasn't able to actually cast items, but it depends which items you'll be able to cast. If you can use mobility items, this could get really insane. Like imagine you combo someone and you just Majestic Leap or Warp Stone or something like that. If you can't use mobility items, then it'll just be a nice quality of life change. Paige got a slight buff, 10 seconds less on her ultimate. Pocket got slight nerfs, Affliction reduced by 6%, DPS and Spirit Scaling. And Flying Cloak tier 3 is now -10 second cooldown instead of -11 second. I think that they're moving in the right direction with Pocket. Pretty soon the hero is going to be like fairly balanced. It probably already is for like the large majority of players. Now, Shiv's stamina regen was increased from 5.5 to 6 seconds. I believe Shiv probably has the longest stamina regen in the entire game now. And Killing Blow recast window was also reduced from 20 to 16 seconds. So very slight nerfs to Shiv. Venator got a sprint speed nerf. And he got a bullet fall off range also nerfed. So he's not as effective from long range. Era Domini cooldown now no longer starts after the conclusion of the ability, now starts immediately. So this is a buff. And the Blessed Stakes damage also got increased by 15. So both of these are buffs to the ultimate, nerfs to the overall mobility and gun damage of the character. Visca's got a lot of changes. So Splatter is no longer as strong. It now does 55 damage instead of 70. The Spirit ratio got nerfed. However, the base bounce count is now 2. So it'll bounce twice, even in the base ability. And the tier 3 only gives +1. Then the cube cooldown tier 3 was taken from -25 to -20. Before it had 33% uptime on the cube. Now it should be more like 25%. So I think a really, really needed change. Punch puddle slow duration reduced as well, but the puddle slow increased, so now it's -30% instead of -20. And the cooldown of puddle punch was also reduced, so that's a buff. And the goo ball tier 2 gives more resistances, so it's +20 instead of +10. It did feel like goo ball was not really a problem at all, and Viscous melted in goo ball. It was more the other abilities that were problematic, particularly Splatter and Cube. So I think that does a good job of addressing the problematic abilities. It might not be enough, but we'll see. Now, Silver also got a gun fall-off adjustment. I mean, this is just straight up a nerf. Her gun fall-off begins at 17 meters, ends at 42. Before it was 20 to 46. So she should deal less damage at range. Slamfire now does 100% bonus damage against NPCs, but doesn't work against objectives, as it was said here. So it only works against troopers and neutrals. This will help Silver farm a little bit, which is an interesting change. Lycan Curse precast time increased from 0.2 to 0.3. Gives you more time to cast the ultimate. The precast move speed was reduced, however. And the Lycan Curse tier 1 reduced from 20% resist to 15% resist. So overall, Silver nerfs for the most part, I would say. And then we've got the Yamato changes, last but not least. Grapple tier 3 charges from +2 to +1. The charge time was increased, and the Flying Slash tier 2 also gives a little bit less spirit power. So that's all we got for this patch. Unfortunately, we did not get the matchmaking update. So that'll be coming later this week, Yoshi said. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the support, and I will catch you guys soon. Bye-bye.